So hopefully now we have a better understanding of our two main topics. Who is Hashem? In other words, who's God? And what does it mean to worship? And remember, worship now is service, and it requires action because we must hear the word of Hashem and then perform it, but also bend our knee or prostrate before him. If we now understand these things, then that means what we're doing in our congregations is we're winging it. But when's the last time we've ever had spent 7 months trying to figure out as a community what Hashem really wants us to do during this time? Now, again, I understand why there's no temple and we don't do the sacrificial system as we once did. But doing away with all of the law and doing away with the law of sin and death is not the same. Because if we're under the law of life and blessing, that means our lives should reflect that. It is time for us to have our own reformation and revolution and seek and pray and fast together and stop playing church and aim for transfiguration. Now, I've talked about this before. We're going to get into what that means in just a moment. But think about this for a minute. Remember the time when Hashem came on the mountain. He descended. God said that he would speak to the children of Israel. If our ancestors would have just allowed Hashem to continue speaking, we wouldn't have all of this weird discussion about whether we're supposed to be doing the Torah, whether it's obsolete, whether it's, something for this generation or not. Let's take a moment and consider what actually happened on the mountain. I'm going to read to you some scriptures here in what is transfiguration. What does this mean and why is this important? So if we go to Shemot, we go to Exodus chapter 19. Hashem is speaking in verse 10 and 11. So Hashem said to Moshe, "Go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and they shall wash their clothing. Let them be prepared for the third day, for on the third day Hashem will descend in the sight of the entire people on Mount Sinai. You shall set boundaries for the people round about, saying, Beware of ascending the mountain or touching its edge. Whoever touches the mountain shall surely die, and a hand shall not touch it, for he shall surely be stoned or thrown down. Whether animal or person, he shall not live. Upon an extending blast of the shofar, they may not ascend to the mountain." The next portion is Exodus chapter 20, verses 15 through 19. Verse 15. Verse 15. The entire people saw the thunder and the flames, the sound of the shofar, and the smoking mountain. The people saw and trembled and stood from afar. Verse 16. They said to Moshe, "You speak to us, and we shall hear. Let Elohim not speak to us, lest we die." Verse 17. Moshe said to the people, "Do not fear, for in order to elevate you has God come, so that awe of him shall be upon your faces, so that you shall not sin." Portion 3. Exodus chapter 34, 1 through 4. Verse 1. Hashem said to Moshe, "Carve for yourself 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I shall inscribe on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets, which you shattered." Verse 2. "Be prepared in the morning, ascend Mount Sinai in the morning, and stand by me there on the mountain top." Verse 3. "No man may ascend with you, nor may anyone be seen on the entire mountain. Even the flock and the cattle may not graze facing the mountain." Verse 4. So he carved out 2 stone tablets like the first ones. Moshe arose early in the morning and ascended to Mount Sinai, as Hashem had commanded him, and he took 2 stone tablets in his hand. Portion 4. Exodus 34, verses 29 through 35. Verse 29. When Moshe descended from Mount Sinai, with the 2 tablets of the testimony in the hand of Moshe as he descended from the mountain, Moshe did not know that the skin of his face had become radiant when he had spoken to him. Verse 30. Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moshe, and behold, the skin of his face had become radiant, and they feared to approach him. Verse 31. Moshe called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the assembly returned to him, and Moshe would speak to them. Verse 31. Moshe called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the assembly returned to him, and Moshe would speak to them. Verse 32. After that, all the children of Israel would approach. He would command them regarding everything that Hashem had spoke to him on the mount. Verse 32. After that, all the children of Israel would approach. He would command them regarding everything Hashem had spoken to him on Mount Sinai. Verse 33. Moshe finished speaking with them and placed a mask on his face. Verse 34. When Moshe would come before Hashem Verse 34. When Moshe would come before Hashem to speak with him, he would remove the mask until his departure. Then he would leave and tell the children of Israel whatever he had been commanded. Verse 35. When the children of Israel saw Moshe's face, that Moshe's face had become radiant, Moshe put the mask back on his face until he came to speak with him. Devarim chapter 5, verses 19 through 30. These words Hashem spoke to your entire congregation on the mountain, from the midst of the fire, the cloud, and the thick cloud, a great voice, never to be repeated. And he inscribed them on 2 stone tablets and gave them to me. Verse 20. It happened that when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, and the mountain was burning with fire, that you, all the heads of your tribes and your elders, approached me. Verse 21. You said, Behold, Hashem our Elohim has shown us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. This day we saw Hashem will speak to a person and he can live. Verse 22. But now why should we die when this great fire consumes us? If we continue to hear the voice of Hashem our Elohim any longer, we will die. Verse 23. For is there any human that has heard the voice of the living Elohim speaking from the midst of the fire as we have and lived? Verse 24. You should approach and hear whatever Hashem our Elohim will say, and you should speak to us whatever Hashem our Elohim will speak to you. Then we shall hear it and we shall do. Verse 25. This is the crux of everything that we've been learning regarding Transfiguration. Hashem heard the sound of your words when you spoke to me, and Hashem said to me, I heard the sound of the words of this people, that they have spoken to you. They did well in all that they spoke. Verse 26. Who can assure that this heart would remain theirs, to fear me and observe my commandments all the days, so that it should be good for them and for their children forever? Verse 27. Go say to them, return to your tents. Verse 28. But as for you, stand here with me, and I shall speak to you the entire commandment and the decrees and the ordinances that you shall teach them, and they shall perform in the land that I give them to possess. Verse 29. You shall be careful to act as Hashem your Elohim commanded you. You shall not stray to the right or to the left. Verse 30. On the entire way that Hashem your Elohim commanded shall you go, so that you shall live, and it will be good for you, and you shall prolong your days in the land that you shall possess.